Hi, this is Jared Looney with Global City Mission, and this is Reaching the Nations Next Door. One of the themes for Global City Mission is making disciples of the world's crossroads. And many of our communities and cities have become very multicultural international places. And so, as Jesus said, go to all nations. For many of us, the nations have come to us, and we're impacting the nations right next door. For Global City Mission, we've identified 81 different countries of origin that have been represented in evangelism encounters with team members in Global City Mission. So, Global City Mission team members working in various cities and having a meaningful gospel conversation, a meaningful evangelistic connection with somebody that represents the country they came from. So, somebody that was born outside the U.S., we've identified 81 different countries of origin. And really, that graphic should tick up to 82 because I know at least one other country on there since putting this graphic together that has been added to that list. So, a number over 80 countries of origin that have been represented evangelism encounters by working in cities right here in North America and working to impact the nations next door. So, as you look at your city and your community, I would love to hear from you in the chat. What are some nations and cultures that you're seeing in your community or your city? So, some work done by Anthony Casey and Enoch Wan pointed out that there's different ways that migrant communities come and organize or don't organize in a city, in a metropolitan area. And the first is well known. It's the ethnic enclave, right? That's the neighborhood. That's like the Chinatown, the little Mexico, the little Iran. It's little Korea, Koreatown, little Bangladesh, Bangla Bazaar. It's all those kind of neighborhoods that really concentrate where the language is spoken on the street, and it's all the markets and the restaurants and the businesses and the holidays and celebrations, and it's a little enclave of that culture carved out in the city. Um, and there's ethnic networks, and this is where you might have a city with substantial number of a certain people group, a certain national origin that are all in this metropolitan area, in the city, or in this community. But there's not an enclave neighborhood. There's not necessarily a place you can go and say, well, here is where that is necessarily concentrated. There often are clusters of people that all many of them live in the same area, but they may not have developed a obvious physical enclave. So it may be more decentralized, and there usually are points of connection, whether that's a market, a restaurant, even like an ethnic chamber of commerce, an association, a religious center or community center. So there often are ways that people connect, different nodes, different connection points to take place, but there's not an obvious like this is that neighborhood that is very much an enclave where it's this group lives. Um, and there's what Casey and Juan refer to as new urban tribes. And so we would just frame this as new subcultures. And a lot of times this might even be kind of second generation, as the kids that grow up under immigrant parents kind of form almost like another culture because they're not the culture of their parents. They're not necessarily the dominant culture either. They're in between. But you also get, we've seen this in cities where you get kind of a multicultural mix. So people that are fairly bicultural themselves, they know how to operate between different cultures. They're fairly global in their experience, and they come together from very different backgrounds, but there's things and common experiences maybe tie them together. And so that's another thing we've seen, and maybe different niche cultures, whether it's an art scene or something like that. That kind of brings people together. So you have these new cultures that form in cities. There's been a lot of work in urban studies that really point out how cities are kind of generators of subcultures. So there's different ways that communities organize and connect, and networks of people are connected to one another. And so when you look at your community, your city, it's helpful to say, okay, there's the obvious, like an ethnic enclave, but who else is here, and what are the connection points, and how do I discover my city? And so recognizing there may be some things there that we just haven't seen yet, but there may indeed be unreached people groups, unreached peoples that are in your midst in that city. When we connect with people, we want to ask the question, what are the relational inroads? In other words, man, if someone says, I want to reach out, I really want to connect with other people, I have a heart for cross-cultural outreach and ministry, but what do I do? And so one of the obvious things is just discovering what are those relational inroads. And it's very simple. Where do people go and what do they like to do? And what do you like to do? And so finding the overlap. Not all of us have everything with common with everybody else, but where is that common ground? And it may be something we like to do, or maybe something we want to learn. But what is that common ground where we can connect with people? And just saying, where do they go? What do they like to do? And what do I like to do? And then finding that common ground with other people. And those relational inroads are opportunities to begin building relationships with other people and learning and listening to them and their experience and what we can learn from their culture and seek opportunities to share the good news that we have in Christ. These are just a couple of tools also for just finding things. And this is specifically if your heart is for Islamic background peoples. The search apps here, Salatomatic and Zabiha. These are ways to look up like mosques, markets, restaurants, things like that, community centers, things like that have a particular cultural background to them. And so and especially if you're looking for, where are kind of clusters in the city, you see several of these things clustered together, and that starts to give you a sense of kind of some of the concentrations in your city, or maybe more Islamic background people might be in your area. And it's an opportunity to love our neighbors and show kindness and to really connect and be a patron of those businesses and listen and learn. This is also an Indian publication, and so this is just the publication for Indian Americans in Florida. So this is just a search on there. It's an online publication, so I did a search of places of worship in the Tampa area, and so it just lists out a whole bunch of places. Most of these are Hindu temples. There's a church or two, and there's a mosque or two, and a Jain temple, and I think a Sikh temple, and the rest are Hindu mosques. And so a lot of big cities will have these kind of associations and publications where you can kind of identify maybe some areas where different people groups might be. There's also cultural holidays. So we might invite people over from different international backgrounds to be part of like a Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter and those kind of big holidays that they know or something that Americans do, and they really would like to be invited. And they'd like to experience that hospitality. And so that's an opportunity. And also to go and be part of other people's holidays and to kind of experience some of what they do, and so it's an opportunity to kind of have that mutual exchange by engaging in these celebrations, holidays, these cultural celebrations. These are really representative of culture. These are really holidays are culture on display. And so these are moments in which we have an opportunity to really learn about others and some of their worldview and values and some of their narrative and story. But it's also an opportunity as we invite people to celebrate holidays with us that, expressing Thanksgiving and the opportunity to tell what we're thankful for as followers of Jesus, and Christmas holiday and the opportunity to talk about, the Word became flesh, how God moved through Mary and Joseph and brought about Jesus into the world. And obviously Easter is kind of the biggie, right? For followers of Christ, that, that Jesus died and rose again. And, I had this opportunity to share in a gathering in a home a few years back for an Easter holiday. And there was people from a closed country in Southeast Asia. There was people from South America. There's people from Middle Eastern countries, all gathered in the same place. And so speaking to a very multicultural crowd, but had that opportunity to share about Jesus' resurrection. And so cultural holidays are really an important moment because there's already kind of different messaging, and ideas attached to them and things that we're celebrating in that time. And so it's an opportunity to really share and to make it a time of hospitality. I wouldn't overthink the programmatic part of it, but just, opening up our homes, having people share around a table, sharing food together, and making it very mutual. They can bring something. It's an opportunity to really share together and celebrate. Another way to help the nations next door that are in our communities is, people really want to be able to communicate. They recognize that they need English to advance and move forward. And a lot of times it's hard. They're working, they might have family, they're getting adjusted. Man, balancing that checkbook. We don't really use checkbooks anymore, but balancing the account, is challenging, and a lot of times at the level of income that a lot of international migrants are dealing with. And so, man, just the opportunity to help people with English, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. This is just one that's listed there. This is a group that uses Bible stories as a way to enter into conversation, as a conversation guide with people. There's other approaches that don't necessarily use Bible stories, but just how to have conversations that evoke maybe themes that would lean into some of that, and then try to spin out, outreach out of those groups. There's different approaches to this. This is just one of the groups that's out there, and so we put that website there in case that's something you want to look into. And so, helping people with conversational English. This is something that we hear often from people. They really want that help, need that help, and really appreciate it coming in a very relational way where people are developing friendships, and truly helping them out of kindness. Another way to really help, migrants is to navigate, helping them to navigate the institutions that we all take for granted and live with. Education help for their kids. I know of an English club with kids from a Middle Eastern country, that has 30, 40, kids in it, and they're just loving the kids, but they're not, they're also openly, who they are as followers of Christ, and they're helping the kids with homework and with English. And so, I've just experienced over and over again people coming here to North America and to the U.S., and one of the top concerns is their kids thriving in school, their kids getting a good education, their kids moving forward with their life and setting them up for success in this country. And so, that's really close to a lot of parents' hearts that come here and really struggle, or maybe come here as refugees and their life got blown up, and so to speak, or kind of somewhat literally. And so, man, they really have that heart for seeing their kids helped and their education advance. Another thing that a colleague of mine did a number of years ago was a legal seminars. And the key here is knowing an honest and ethical immigration attorney, because immigration attorneys who are not ethical and not honest will say, yes, I can help you, even if they know they can't, and then still take the person's money. And so, knowing someone who is ethical and has integrity, especially if it's a believer, that's only going to take cases that they can actually help with, come and do a legal seminar. And so, basically give some help for people that want to navigate the system, maybe people that are scared to try to tap into resources that are out there that can help them do better, and move forward. But they're nervous about their status. They're a little upset about, they're scared to really engage to get any help. And in some cases they may have already been ripped off before. But can we bring somebody in to offer a little bit of a seminar to say, hey, here's what you need to know, here's the current laws, here's what's happening in the system, so that people can understand that. And then just help people interpret the different systems they encounter. I cannot tell you how many healthcare papers I've looked at that I do not understand anyway, and in English as an American, but I have a head start. And so, just helping people to navigate things like healthcare and health insurance, school forms and documents. I have helped write out a number of resumes on the computer, and just help people sit at a computer and start working on that, and type out their own resume, and helping them with formatting it, and understanding what people are looking for. Because again, they may come from a really professional background where they already know these things. They just need access to a computer and a printer, or they may come from a background where they didn't get that. And because I've met people that have come from Southeast Asia as a rice farmer, and people that lived in a refugee camp for the last decade and things like that. And so providing the opportunity to help people navigate job and school and healthcare and insurance and all these different things. I know that some of the people that have been on our team have helped take people to the DMV and help them and navigate the whole getting a driver's license and how to pass that test, and tutoring them and teaching them how to be able to drive, because which will set them up for getting a better job. And so and not getting in trouble because they lack the driver's license and things like that, because some people don't realize that those laws get enforced here. And so just helping people interpret the system as they encounter it. And again, don't be shy. Sharing who you are means sharing your faith. You are a follower of Jesus. And again, that doesn't mean shoving it out people's throat. I think that does mean loving people and offering friendship unconditionally. One of the guys in our team has had a number of international people in his home, sharing hospitality with them, and he's had a number of Discovery Bible studies start. And there's other ministries in the same proximity as him in the same city that have struggled to kind of get that first Discovery Bible study going. And I honestly, I think one of the differences is just the amount of hospitality shown and a genuine expression of unconditional friendship. And he tells people all the time, I will still be your friend if you don't want to do a Bible study. It's okay. Just unconditional friendship, unconditional love, and just demonstrating that to people, I think is a really important thing. And then thinking about churches as a whole, church as an entity, corporately, there's different pathways that churches might think about. So one is indeed inviting people and welcoming them into our churches. There are people that will only be reached by planting a contextualized church among that people group. That is absolutely the case. That's kind of that last point there. But inviting people into church also, because there's also individuals that they kind of want to connect with the dominant culture. They really are looking for maybe a little more assimilation. Or maybe they went to a Christian school or Catholic school. They may have watched stuff on TV and YouTube and things like that. And so they really would like an invitation to be part of a church. And also, it's helpful to remember that the vast majority of global migrants that come to the U.S. are actually Christians. And so actually, connecting with folks and inviting them into our churches and creating hospitable spaces for people is a net positive. Also becoming multi-congregational, and we don't mean multi-campus in the way that's happened recently, but thinking about different language congregations. I have found in our experience that these are the most effective and the healthiest when there's shared leadership. They kind of have a shared youth ministry, which usually would take place in English because the kids are learning the language usually quicker. And so, having that shared youth ministry under one roof, and then having different language congregations, but having shared leadership. Most of the time, this ends up being more of a rental model where it's kind of just a congregation using the space. That's fine. I mean, I think that's a great thing to do, and be hospitable to this other church that is now using, sharing the space and helping pay the bills. That's a great thing. But if a church wants to go fully multi-congregational, really having shared leadership, the elder pool comes from both congregations or multiple congregations. The staff works together. There's a sense of shared mission. We just meet separately in different language and cultural settings under the same roof. And then also just thinking about what to do off campus, right? So developing cells, different small groups, micro churches, culturally distinct campuses. So this is where, the multi-campus model has done some interesting things. One of the things that often seems to take place, they all look an awful lot alike, and sometimes exactly alike. And so thinking about cross-cultural outreach, what about planting a campus that has its own distinct culture and rhythms and language and worship style that is used, it still is able to operate with the shared resources and shared vision and operate with the staff in a way that really is, beneficial for everyone. But what happens at that campus is culturally and lingually distinct. Um, there's also planting new faith communities, which you mentioned a little while ago. There are people that are ready to come to an existing church. There's a number of people as well that are only going to be reached if if we do contextualized church planting in those communities, really reaching out in a way that connects with the various people groups that we're encountering. And so we need to think about planting churches. And as soon as we say planting churches, for a lot of people, they think, man, I can't do that because it's so much money and so much, such a big, heavy lift. And that's one way to plant churches, but also you can start small and start simple and grow slow. And that's okay. Meet in a home, meet in a, in a community center, things like that. And so, planting new faith communities in among different people groups, and especially when we think about reaching unreached people groups, that oftentimes, if we want to see that spread organically, it's going to take contextualized church planting among that people group. So there's some resources that we just would love to make you guys aware of. So a couple of text that are out there. Crossroads of the Nations is a mission textbook that is talking about globalization, migration and diaspora evangelism. And so that may be helpful. That's been used in different Bible college and seminary classes. And then Mosaic, which has also been used as a textbook at times, but was really written with the target audience in mind, is people that have ministry training. So ministry leaders, pastors, ministers, they have ministry training, they have theological training, but they really haven't experienced like the cross-cultural training and missions, missiology, anthropology. They haven't really done that kind of cross-cultural training. And so this is not covering all of that, of course, but it's meant to be a little bit of a crash course, so to speak, in the context of a book, kind of wrapped up in a book for engaging culture. Then a couple of training opportunities we have. One is Disciple Maker cohort. So these are online cohorts that meet together for 7 sessions, usually every other week, for 90-minute sessions. And the first 4 of these 7 sessions is covering healthy conversational evangelism. And the last 3 of these sessions is on starting a discovery group in your own community. And then the other thing that we do as a resource out there is evangelism training for local churches. This is on life and life evangelism. This is healthy conversational evangelism. And so we do this in the form of a 3-hour workshop where we come into your church and we really are training your members to engage in evangelistic conversations, seeking receptive people receptive to engage the conversation, and how to enter into that, how to bring up spiritual things without making people run from you, without making them run, but also really signaling to people that you are a person of faith and hopefully entering into deeper spiritual conversations. And so we do this as a 3-hour training for churches, and we'd be happy to connect with you about any of those things if it's something you're interested in. The books you can find on Amazon, but if you want to know about any of those training opportunities for your members or for yourself, reach out to globalcitymission.org. And we would love for you to follow us on Instagram. We've been on Facebook for a long time, but we're in the process of growing our Instagram presence and are putting a lot of things out there. And so we would love to have you follow us, and just go to at GCMI Go on Instagram, and we'd love to have you as a follower. So we really appreciate you and your ministry and your community, and would love to be more helpful as we can to help you impact your city and to reach the nations next door. Like we said, Jesus said, "Go to all nations," and for many of us, the nations have come to us. And so let's work together and let's partner together and make disciples at the world's crossroads.